Hi. We didn't reach the conclusion of this wonderful day, but this is certainly a phase where we can transfer our gaze from past, present to future. This is what we'll try to do in this panel that will focus on the future of Israel and the Palestinians, the conflict that we're dealing with in the last year and a half more than anything, and beyond that, an attempt to look open-eyed into the future, following everything that we saw, experienced, and thought, and try to find a way for an arrangement, agreement. Maybe in Washington they prefer the word deal, in order to mitigate, to even solve the conflict, if we can say this. For this, we brought a panel of experts. Each one will present his opinion, assuming that this will be a variety of opinions, and we can even argue with the constraints of manners and time, but our time is limited. And so we want first and foremost to give a presentation about a survey that was conducted especially for this conference made by iPanel, and this assessed the Israeli population's opinions. You see the division here between Israelis or Jews and Arabs, and we will look at the overall pieces of information. What is the best solution for you, in your eyes, when we're talking about a solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? Continue, status quo, 14%. Take sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. Separation, 34%. And a permanent status agreement, 31%. You see how it's dispersed. We will relate to this in the panel itself. Do you support or object to a two-state solution in a broader regional agreement with moderate Arab states? Don't know, 16%. I totally object, 35%. Pretty much object, 15%. Pretty much agree, 22%. Support strongly, 12%. As far as Gaza, the next slide, what of these options do you support? What do you agree with? Victory in Gaza will be achieved only after 8% don't know. 8% think that a Palestinian moderate entity, not Hamas, will rule. 4% bring back the villages to the surroundings of Gaza Strip. Assume sovereignty and bring back Jewish settlements, 19%, and maybe the most significant piece of information here, 61% bring back the hostages, all of them. This relates to the discussion we had before. And the last thing that we asked in this survey for this conference, with what sentences do you agree more? Let's go on backwards. Israel should go back to high-intensity fight in Gaza. 23.5% agree. Israel should focus on ending the war and go to regional arrangements. 42% supported this. Israel should focus on conditions for immigration of Palestinians, 26%. 88% do not know. So I'm honored to open the discussion with this panel. And the first thing I want to do is, following the data emanating from this poll, ask you to present the arrangement or framework that you think that will best support the situation. Gershon, we will start with you. But before we start, a technical comment. In order to address all the issues we wanted to, each one of you will get 2 minutes, so the clock is running. You see, we started a bit late. And when the timer zeros, please move to the next speaker. Gershon, the floor is yours. Thank you. First, there's nothing permanent in life. And that's what Jews say in weddings. We read today's great love. Tomorrow, who knows? Nothing is permanent. Put that on the table. This is something that I learned from Aryeh Naor, that was in the Begin government. Menachem Begin wanted a permanent peace framework. Most of people objected to uprooting villages. The Mapai movement do not believe in regular or never-ending frameworks. About framework with Palestinians, because I don't believe with a final deal and with agreements, even though both sides have dreams. What I support and stick to and adhere to is consensus and the framework that Rabin brought in the last speech he gave relating to Oslo. Four principles that he gave there. The first is that the Jewish state will be 80% Jewish citizens, and for this he moved most of the Palestinians to the Palestinian Authority, what happened in Gaza, and Judea and Samaria in 96, and areas. The second, united Jerusalem with Givat Ze'ev and Ma'ale Adumim in the east. The third, the Jordan Valley, the security parameter, and a Palestinian entity that is less than a state. This has many ramifications. This means Jewish settlements or villages throughout Area C, and this reflects the borders of Area C. There is no way we can protect Israel from Route 6, and the Rabin framework is what I support. Thank you. Limor.
Thank you very much. I agree with Gershon regarding the only safe thing is that nothing is fixed. We are at a very shaking and dark time, and there's extreme uncertainty, and we are still in the conflict with the Palestinians. There's one thing that's very clear. Between Jordan in the sea, there are 5 million people. About half of them are Palestinian Arabs. About half of them are Jewish Israeli. About half and half. So there's one thing that we agree upon. We are not one nation. And in such states as this, we look at we look broadly, and there are three possible patterns. One is a government based on control. What do we mean control? It could be based on discrimination. It could be based on a military regime, apartheid, conquer, or a combination of all of these. Second pattern is an attempt to eradicate the problem through ethnic cleansing, genocide. We know that from around the world, not only from one place. But third pattern is the possibility of living in peace based on partnership. And why am I saying peace based on partnership? It's because peace cannot exist in such situations that we have with the Palestinians. Peace cannot be based only on separation. It could also be based on separation. It could also be based on distribution. But what we must understand is that we are meant, or apparently our fate is, you can call it whatever you want, but we live together in this territory. And so we must learn how to do it, because until we do that, we will continue declaring endless war on our opponents.
Udi. Okay. The truth is that Gershon was more delicate than I expected. But okay. So I'll go to both extremes, maybe. Today, we saw in the polls here, the Israeli population understands three things that bother me very much. The first is that a Palestinian state is an existential threat for the state of Israel. So you see that the Israeli Jewish population do not support establishing a Palestinian state, even part of a regional coalition. When we asked about separation as part of a regional coalition, it went up to 70%. So 70% support a regional coalition where we separate from the Palestinian. But when you see the term Palestinian state, everyone objects. The second, the understanding that the security needs of the state of Israel necessitate controlling the Palestinian people. You hear what I'm saying? The security needs of Israel necessitate controlling another people. The third, to fix this, there's Jewish supremacy. We deserve all Area C. We have a problem with A and B because they're Palestinians, but we deserve Area C. These three dimensions that influence the Israeli society distance us from any ability to reach an arrangement or agreement, as Limor said, and actually lead us to the most problematic situation where we will be one state. One state, it's one big explosion. We that define the Palestinian issue as a problem that we don't know what to deal with, so what do? Absorb it into us. It's like, I don't want to say disease, okay, but it's like we need separation. We now move to a short discussion, like before, about the Gaza Strip. Roll up your sleeves and say, what next? The headline here is, what yes. It's easy to say, what not. You can negate other ideas, but even if we eliminate things from all the smart ideas that you present, what can happen to a solution? Trump said it is not only inside of Israel, the platform could be a subject that will the security issues and the security political horizon for Israel in the Gaza Strip. Now in a survey as far as the population of Israel and their opinions. Gershon. The Gaza Strip is a problem that is in radical uncertainty when the government of Israel, not that I'm here to defend it, but I understand this deeply, prevented or avoided the Biden's request to talk about the day after and define it. The government made this decision because it's a war where you can't define the day after. All the wars that we had from 48, including 73, at the end of the war, there are states like Jordan, Syria, that we discuss the day after. We don't discuss who's going to control Syria or Cairo. Here, there's a war where its essence is to change the situation, including change the regime. And the option that we're told, okay, so bring an international force, or the Palestinian Authority, or United Arab Emirates, or Saudis, there's no chance if Hamas is armed. The Palestinian Authority is not able to control Jenin and Tulkarm and Nablus. How will it succeed opposing Hamas? That's a highly motivated force that is able to thwart every Palestinian Authority rule. Now, there is an ability to such an option of the Palestinian Authority that will be in the front line, maybe, as far as investments, but Hamas will be like Hezbollah. They will stay armed on the sidelines, not control rehabilitation and civilian issues like in Lebanon. The government of Lebanon does this, but will be armed, and their mechanisms will continue. So this situation, with the limitations of the Egyptians not accepting or rejecting Trump's plan, the situation in Gaza towards Rafiah El Arish, the Egyptians won't give 1 meter of land for this. So for Gaza right now, there's no future, as long as Hamas is armed and there. And this we need to deal with. And if we don't deal with it, it will continue to threat. Okay, thank you. Limor.
Okay, so what? I propose a strategy based on 5 pillars for today. The first pillar is a strategic choice for peace, is a long-term choice, not a choice that we are just trying on for a moment and then we stop. Because the way of war, the path of war has been tried for 100 years already. So persistent choice of peace, understanding that only political agreements that are stable and peace can assure that we have safety for the long term and nothing else can do it. Second pillar is updating our peace perception. There is a perception of peace or 2 states that has become fixated since the 1990s, and we need to update it. This discussion should be rethought based on what we know today about conflicts of this kind, and it's not the right thing to think about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in the same terms we thought about the conflict we had with Egypt or Jordan. We are not 2 states. This is maybe the goal, but we have a strategy that should reach 2 states, which is the basis. We have two nations that should be defined. This is the second pillar. Now I will speak faster. The third pillar, we should update and develop a new security conception, because the one that we heard about today is only military strategic. Strategy and safety and military are not the same thing. National security is much broader than that, and this should be developed and update a conception of security that fits peace and does not oppose peace. And the last two pillars: one is developing resilience to a peace process, not to fall into empty promises and exaggerated expectations. And the last one is that we must have assistance from outside. That's exact.
Not talking about time, we're talking about opinion. Let's put this all into context. Let's arrange this. What do we learn from the disengagement 2005 to 7th of October, so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past? Containment, and we will do good with them and it will be okay. We see that this didn't work. We left the area to the terrorism. We actually neglected the area for terrorism. Working from afar doesn't work. Standoff doesn't work, as we heard from Guy. We don't have a solution for the subterranean threat. We have to take this into consideration. We have a problem with the third party, where the Egyptians, that we can't rely on them to prevent smuggling. But we also don't want to instigate a conflict with them. Some are doing that now. And we have to remember that with Trump and without Trump, we are in the focal point of international tribunals. We have to remember, also for our own moral standing, what we try to bring is let's expand this event. Let's broaden it. Not only Gaza, look wider. Israel has an opportunity, a huge opportunity, to reach a regional coalition. It worked very well militarily, we saw it, and it can be expanded, this coalition, to other fields, financial and others. And we want to establish a regional coalition, because doing this, we will get out of this campaign with victory, because some have been trying to hurt this coalition. No, this is my time. So we need to go in this direction. This direction, part of it is that Arab states enter and put their hands into the Gaza Strip. Don't sit on the fence and give us comments or advice. And the idea that Trump brought up, that is crazy in a way, but it shocked the system. I don't trust them. It shook them up, and they understand that they need to do something. So they should come in and deal with the problem that Hamas doesn't rule the Gaza Strip. First, we'll bring the hostages. Then we'll deal with the rest. We'll do another short round dealing with the issue that is again being brought up of the Gaza Strip and Judea and Samaria, the combination between them, the fact that we have a campaign that has several arenas. But even if we talk about the Palestinians, there are two fronts. There's a duality that we need to relate to, because without relating to it, we won't reach a framework. The issue here is the Palestinian Authority. Specifically, I want to address the possibility that they will play a part, if it's in Gaza or in general, in a future framework. What do you think, based on what we saw in the poll, that there's so much uncertainty, and in general, there's not one clear view here? What could hold, what could sustain us future and give us a good framework after everything that happened? Start with you, Gershon. Solution from the type of certainty or stability does not exist. As far as the specific question, connecting Judea and Samaria and Gaza, Jacques Neria, that was an advisor of Rabin at the time of Oslo. Lubnani was his nickname. That was what Arafat called him. He says that Yitzhak Rabin was scared to understand the safe passage that was dealt with back then between the Judea and Samaria, or Judea and Gaza. The Palestinian Authority in Gaza, or the people in Gaza, are totally different from the population from the Hebron Mountains or the south of Jerusalem. There was never a connection between them. The borders of the British Mandate somehow connected them into one British Mandate. The power of the Hamas idea and the commitment and devotion of the people of Gaza to fight, and the professional knowledge, if this filters into Judea and Samaria, this will be a huge problem. We're not allowed to connect them. It's an existential security interest of the state of Israel. How do you manage this? This is one of the reasons that I certainly saw the rise of Hamas at 2007 some kind of advantage in strengthening the separation between Judea and Samaria and Gaza. A Palestinian Authority is in itself an important factor or entity because it controls most of Palestinians in Judea and Samaria and or helps it that we do not need to deal with it. From 1996, we do not control them, only for security reasons. And what the Palestinian Authority does, it's not something that we can trust or count on. So a solution does not exist, but processes, including coexistence, can be sustained and developed.
I want to repeat what I started with, that Israel was founded on. There are two nations here, and the way I don't think we would have accepted the Palestinians to decide who's ruling us, I think it's the same. It shouldn't be us who decides who runs them and who governs them, the Palestinians. I think that looking around the world also shows that attempts to dictate who will rule, who will govern, failed completely. And we know the colossal attempts the US had in Afghanistan and Iraq and in other places as well. So the first and foremost interest we have here is for a Palestinian state to be founded, and that we will help it become founded, that it will be thriving, that it will be stable next to Israel, side by side with Israel. I think that every person wants to have successful neighbors. If there is a neighborhood next to mine that is a rough neighborhood, it's not good for me. So this is Israel's interest. How do we do that? We go back to my first point, strategic choice for peace with the Palestinian people. They are now dismantled as a people, same as we are, but dismantling it even more will not serve us well. So we should go back to the decision of distribution and the beginning of the Oslo agreements and what Rabin signed on. So the West Bank and Gaza Strip is one territorial unit. We signed that in the agreement. So I repeat, the strategic choice that is most important we can make is headed by the security of the people of Israel, is to choose peace. And it is based on self-definition for the two nations that live here.
Okay, I think I got to we're in agreement that the Palestinian Authority is positive. Its existence is positive. This is what I understand from the discourse here, even though the government of Israel is trying to collapse the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority did not fight and is not fighting for us against terrorism. To defend ourselves, we need to fight ourselves. But the Palestinian Authority deals with all the matters of life for almost 3 million Palestinians that live in the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. And this is good. And we need to preserve the Palestinian Authority. We need to create the conditions the Palestinian Authority will be able to conduct the reforms that everyone's talking about. This is also something positive, the fact that we're talking about reforms that they should undertake. So we need to create the conditions for them to fulfill this reform. We should not make a connection between Gaza and Judea and Samaria. We should maintain this separation until we understand what's going on in Gaza and see that the Palestinian Authority is stable enough in Judea and Samaria. We must be very careful from turning Judea and Samaria, all in parameter action that are similar to Gaza into Judea and Samaria. That's problematic. It's like a prophecy that fulfills itself. At the end, Judea and Samaria will become Gaza. We have to stop. People that are sitting in this room here now have to be very alert to this great grave danger that this government is leading us towards of assuming sovereignty on Judea and Samaria, bringing in 3 million Palestinians, turning into one country, even doing this to area. We have to halt this, to stop this move to maintain Israel Jewish and democratic and safe, and on the other hand, to enable us to do or make this coalition with others. Because if we assume responsibility or sovereignty, we won't be able to do that. The variety of opinion is very clear. In the few minutes left, we should present areas of connection or where we can agree on. Also, things that are coming from outside. This is Trump's ideas, for instance. He's again trying ideas. We talked about Gaza. You said this sounds crazy, but in a way, this was just to rock the boat and see what happens. And it's already happening in a way. This week or in the next few days, we are supposed to see an Arab plan, right? And also for this, we're waiting. In this time of wait, and in light of everything that we said, in conclusion, I would like you to focus on what you think can be done also with third parties, international, Americans or Arabs in the area, and see if this can happen, if this can converge to a regional arrangement, normalization, and all these things. How practical is this? And can we aspire to something that's beyond what we see so far? As far as the proposal of Trump, it's not a plan. What he's doing, what he did, what he's continuing to do, is he changed the coordination, the coordinates, and he said that status quo is not necessarily what needs to continue forward. If you open it, there are abilities to think other thoughts. He brought something else also, expressed something else, and that is who will pay for rehabilitation in Gaza when there's also rehabilitation in Syria. The entire region is full of destruction. And you can't do this only with philanthropy, because maybe it will be destroyed again. Someone else could lead to that. So he says, I want this on the foundations of financial issues with even business gain. He's right. It needs us to realign in the way we manage rehabilitation. Maybe the Egyptians will do it. The question is, if will they do this with the corruption that's known? And bottom line, the big fear or anxiety is normalization with Saudi Arabia. These are their demands. They connect to the demands of all the Muslims, including Erdogan. A capital in Jerusalem, what the Jewish people cannot accept. The 67 lines, which means uprooting. Israel can't accept this and cannot implement this. We can't even defend Israel in these conditions. Certainly not Jerusalem in these conditions. So what? Yes. To tell them, come, start to rehabilitate Gaza, and let's see what new emergence will happen. Limor.
So I said that the fifth pillar is international assistance and aid, and I see it as two things. One, in terms that are more known to us, is combining in a regional alliance that many people support, and beyond that, because we're at a state of lack of trust and the great hostility between the two nations, it's clear that what I talked about with peace cannot happen in one moment. Two nations cannot just be founded in a minute. And we must look at it as a long-term issue. We need assistance, like the world has devoted itself with for example, with the Arab states that presented plans up to this day, and they mean it. We can start an international authority both in Gaza and in the West Bank that will be in charge of rebuilding the Palestinian state and creating the right conditions to allow security and peace agreements exist in all the region.
Udi, I leave you the conclusion. Not conclusion, just my opinion. About Gaza, I think this was said, and I'll say this in a more clear way. The idea that Trump raised is a method where you shuffle the cards, and now there are new cards on the table. And I think there's a card that has been built. They cut a minute and a half off my time. The Egyptians have a plan to have technocrats in Gaza based on Gazans, not Hamas and not Fatah. Gazans, professionals that will manage the civilian aspects. The Egyptians tell us, by the way, that they understand that at this time, when this administration is established, Israel will have security freedom of action because no one else really wants to fight Hamas. And they understand that Hamas is a problem. They think that they will be able to convince Hamas to give up control, and maybe even some of their leaders will leave Gaza. But this way, to build an alternative that will lead to the ability to send an inter-Arab task force that would assist this technocrat government or authority to manage the Gaza Strip. Israel needs to condition two things, by the way: not Hamas in rule, and no this later phase of rehabilitation without a significant effective mechanism of demilitarization. As far as Judea and Samaria, we need to go to separation from the Palestinian Authority. It's a political separation, geographic, demographic, not security. Not security, because security, we need to maintain freedom of action. It's not a final state, not two states, but it leads to options looking forward. It enables us to connect to a regional coalition. We can assess together and see if the Palestinian Authority can change or not. If it can't change, we'll go back to the situation before, the dire situation we're in now. But if it can change, let's try. We don't have great other ideas. We need to halt all the crazy ideas of settling Gaza and annexing Judea and Samaria. We have to halt this. Thank you very much.